Greetings, this is Griff Ruby with part 71 of my series, Ecclesiology for Sedevacantists, based on Dogmatic Theology, Volume 2, Christ Church by Msgr G. Van Noort. Continuing, page 201. B. From the vast number of genuine saints the Church continually produces, no one can compute the exact number of men and women saints the Catholic Church has brought forth from apostolic times until the present day. Something of the vastness and continuousness of that production is witnessed by the Martyrology and by that huge scholarly collection of the Bollandists' Actus Sanctorum. The recently revised 1956 edition of Butler's Lives of the Saint contains some 2,500 entries. There is hardly a nation in which Catholicism flourishes, or formerly flourished, in fact hardly a diocese, which does not have its own saints. We adduce one fact, merely as a sample of many other facts, the like of which can be found nowhere in the world save in the Catholic Church. The Church possesses, as a normal part of its life, public legislation and standard tribunals to examine the cases where the servants of God whose sanctity is proposed for official recognition. These tribunals act with such accuracy and strictness that, even though they discuss cases of canonization publicly, no learned man has ever protested their decisions. Despite their severity, it is by no means a rare event for these tribunals to hand down a decision raising some servant of God to the honor of the altar. Since the start of the 19th century, more than 400 people have been declared blessed and more than 100 declared saints. Now, obviously, that's part of the normal functioning of the life. As we know, the disaster has interrupted a great deal of the normal functioning of the life of the Church. But we care about that. You know, the Novus Ordo, they go through, and the East Orthodox go through pretenses of these things. They have their own so-called saints, but they haven't applied the same standards. They did away with the devil's advocate. They did away with, requiring miracles. They did away with a lot of things, you see, because basically they're not going to find any more unless they do away with all those kinds of things. Then they can canonize whoever's popular, you see. And unfortunately, that's what they're doing. So, I mean, that's a totally discredited process. It's just no real validity. So, we're the ones who are supposed to be doing it. I would say that would have to be another one of the things that we'll probably have to wait until we have a pope again. I should point out, in the early days of the Church, it was the same way. I mean, people could be venerated as saints, and I think you can find a good many individual traditional Catholics who really are truly saints of heroic sanctity. I'm sure that that'll be found upon some examination, but that may be down the pike. And in the meantime, here we are, surrounded by such an extraordinary cloud of living witnesses in the congregations of the traditional Catholics that, I don't know, it seems incredible that anyone could ever take that for granted. But one visit to somewhere else is a very good reason that shows, we have something very, very special. We have the saints. Someday, when there comes to be such a process again, it'll be traditional Catholics who are raised to the altar and nobody else. Continuing, page 202. This harvest of heroic sanctity has not ceased even in modern times. It's slowed down, I think, but like I said, mostly because we don't have this, mechanism for official recognition much anymore. But we need to revive that, and I think it's possible. For example, the following illustrious confessors have been declared venerable. Vincent Palate, priest, died 1850. Francis Lieberman, a Jewish convert, died 1852. Father Peter Donders, CSSR, died 1887. Father Damien the leper, Damien de Wister, died 1889. We went to Hawaii. Fascinating story. The following have been canonized as saints. John Baptist Vianney, the cure of Ars, who died 1859. Gabriel the Sorrowful Virgin, who died in 1862. John Bosco, 1888. Therese of the Child Jesus, died in 1897. Gemma Galgani, who died in 1903. Pius X, who died in 1914. And Francis' mother, Cabrini, who died in 1917. So, a few hundred years from now, perhaps, I believe that the many names of great heroic leaders in Catholic tradition today will be raised to the altar. So I have every confidence of that. And anyone who's ever known these saints and seen, the heroic sanctity that traditional Catholics come to take for granted. I mean, there's nothing else one can conclude. An impressive number of martyrs underwent death to spread of faith in barbaric regions, as attested in mission annals. To these should be added the martyrs of Poland, Siberia, Mexico, and Russia, whose deaths were brought about by persecution, hunger, and cold during the earliest stages of Marxist world revolution. In addition to the current well-publicized cases of Cardinal Mydzinski, Archbishop Stepanek, and Cardinal Wyszynski, literally hundreds of heroic priests, nuns, and laymen are at present suffering imprisonment for the faith in Iron Curtain countries. Their dry martyrdom is perhaps even more difficult than that of actual execution. It's even a kind of dry martyrdom, just putting up with how few we are. Our fewness itself is a kind of dry martyrdom in a way, although of itself not anywhere near as great as that. But it's still something of the same flavor. Study the history of the Catholic Church a little more deeply and find that it has not only produced saints in every century, but that it is truly a church which belongs to the saints. In other words, it is especially by the works of saints that the Catholic Church has been spread, consolidated, defended, and supported in 100 different ways. Those who planted the church in the very beginning, the apostles and the first Christian bishops, and who later planted it in individual countries, Augustine, Patrick, Boniface, Cyril, Methodius, Francis Xavier, and so forth, were for the most part saints and martyrs. Who took the lead in refuting heresies? Who defended most vigorously the church's liberty against the assaults of secular power? Wow, that's us. We believe in the social reign of Christ. The Novus Ordo does not. Who's refuting the heresies? They're falling for them. We refute the heresies. I refute the heresies. And every traditional Catholic priest and bishop, and a great many individual laity, not only the prominent writers, but even many others in their own private forum, their private conversations among friends and families and workmates and so forth, are refuting the heresies and can do so quite well. Who defended most vigorously the church's liberty? Who founded the great religious orders? Who developed the science of theology, constructed the church's worship and liturgy, and who revived its spirit of religion and piety whenever it threatened to collapse? Was it not there for all others, the saints themselves? Is it Christ himself, of course, who builds the ornaments of his church? He is the head of the mystical body. I am the vine, you are the branches. Small wonder, then, if he uses as his principal instruments the people who are most imbued with his spirit. Christ is the perfect model of utterly sublime holiness, and he is the head of the church. What wonder, then, if he makes the saints, as it were, the very bones of his body? So, see, the Catholic Church finally sparkles with the holiness of cherubims. That miracles have never ceased to occur in the Catholic Church, even in the blackest periods of its history, is plain from the very degrees of beatification and canonization. Since the time of Urban VIII in 1625, with the exception of some martyrs, no one is beatified until it has been conclusively established that at least 2 miracles have occurred through his intervention, and no one is canonized until 2 more irrefutable miracles have been proven. Finally, it is no secret how many miraculous cures occur even to the present day at the Shrine of Lourdes in France. I wonder if they're still happening now that that's in schismatic hands. But, there had been, and maybe for some time. I think even some other shrines that have been like in the hands of the East Orthodox, because they were established in the days of Christ, have sometimes still had their share of a miracle or two. But the miracle is no affirmation either of the East Orthodox, the schismatic church that grabbed it. And of course, should such a thing happen now, it's no credit to the Novus Ordo. They can't make any new shrines that will have any real miracles. They can't, and they never will. You can take that one to the bank. I already have. Scholion, temporal prosperity. Well, maybe we'll take that one next.